Hey Devin, this is, hey Devin.
Hey Devin.
Hey Devin, hey, how you doing?
Devin. Oh my God.
Hey guys, this is Devin from Barefoot Props. And I got my friends here today. This is Elise, this is Marty. You can follow them on Leezy May Cosplay on Instagram.
Me.
And so they're gonna make a Nimbus 2000 today and kind of show you step by step on how they're doing that. Stay tuned.
My foam here, I'm just using 1/4 inch. I've got my templates that I made from my aluminum foil mold, and I've already got one drawn out and marked for y'all, and I'm gonna start marking. I've got stuff on here like little registration marks you'll see in a few minutes, and you'll see numbers and stuff too, so we'll label them so we don't get confused when we're trying to glue this stuff back on, because this hair color is natural and you don't want to get confused when you're gluing this stuff back on. All right, here we go, last one. And then we get to use sharp objects, just always fun. All right, important, when you peel these off, make sure you label. See, I have these labeled like 4 and 1. These are the sides. And when you peel them off, you also label these. Number 4. There's a bug and I'm scared. Oh my God. Y'all, I don't like bugs. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna start cutting our foam. All you need is a super sharp box cutter. We're just going to cut straight down. We're not going to bevel. It's really simple. Okay, so we have our pieces ready to glue together. Some people prefer hot glue, where I prefer contact cement. Hey, Rocket. I think it gives a stronger hold and it's easier to sand in the end. So what you need to do, remember I told you to make, I use numbers, some people prefer letters, and these registration marks. So I have number 1 and number 1. We're gonna glue number 1 and number 1 together. So I got my contact cement here. Hey, Rocket. He's helping. Okay, so I have glued all each one of the sides of my pieces. They have dried. They're tacky on each side. So what I'm gonna do now is carefully place each one of them by their number to the side by their registration mark. So let's get started.
Go ahead.
All right, here we go. Pretty easy. Start at the top. 1. I'm just going to keep it straight. You don't want to let the bottom way down here touch. If you do, don't freak out like I do. I kind of freak out every once in a while. You can pull it apart. Okay, so we've gotten all of them glued together so far, so now we've got to glue the last piece, which is the absolute hardest when you're gluing together something that's round. This is kind of round. So you don't want the ends to touch. It's really hard to get apart at this stage. So luckily about this is that it's going to be covered up by bristles. So if it's not absolutely perfect, it's okay.
So for the handle, I'm using a 4-foot length of a 2x6 board, and we're going to start off on the bandsaw just to get a very rough outline of the handle itself. Then we will take it over to the Beltsander. I'm using just a 60 grit sandpaper on here just to really work in that initial shape of the actual broom handle. Once we get the shape down, we'll move over to some smaller hand sanders and just get finer and finer until it's nice and smooth. Once we've got all of that done, the only other piece to really add is going to be just one short length of dowel that's going to go into the end of it, just using a little 3/8 inch piece that I found at Home Depot. And this will just be in there to support the bristles so that they don't collapse on us if you decide to lean on it.
So here's your rough draft of the Nimbus 2000. Still got a long ways to go, but now it's on to the details, which is the fun part.
Don't you get out my property! Damn cosplayers.
All right, so now I am going to walk you through the steps of how I'm turning this part that we made into basically this part of the broom. In your materials list, I am gonna put in what I bought from Amazon is this long bundle of wicker. It was a lot more organized and less a heaping mess. Don't know how it happened. Would you be able to tell me why this is no longer in a nice, pretty bundle like I had left it last night? Anyway, so what you're gonna want to do is get your strand. You want it longer than the broom itself, and cut. That's it. Now it'll be easier for you, but because as I said, mine's not in a bundle anymore. So we're gonna play pretend. Say like this part's in a bundle, just take the actual strand, take what you've cut off so far, and just lay it up against it all, cut, do another strand, whole bundle, and cut. You'll need about 2. And then I want to show you in a time-lapse video here in a second how I stained it. So staining the wicker is really easy. You just get your rag, dip it in the stain, grab a piece of wicker, go up one side, then go down the other. Repeat the process a bunch of times. Okay, you're done staining. You let it cure overnight. Mine are cured. So I'm going to show you how to glue them on. I use just superglue gel. So it's not hard. It's just very, very time consuming. And you're going to want to start in the middle. You can spray paint this black. I have found it, I have done one before. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really fit. You're not gonna see the inside of it, and if you do, this foam is dark enough. If you don't use dark foam, black foam, you will obviously want to spray paint it black. You're not gonna glue all the way to the end because obviously you have a much wider surface area here than you do here. So we just kind of glue to here, give or take. And then at the end, you start gluing and cutting. And then you'll find you'll have some gaps, and you'll take some of your wicker and cut, glue into the holes. So once your first piece of wicker is glued down, you can just put a few drops of super glue up against your other pieces of wicker, and then just kind of butt up against each other, and they just kind of glue themselves to themselves, and you get this real nice seamless look. And you'll notice, granted against the curves, you will have a few gaps, but don't worry about that. It'll close itself up, and if it doesn't, at the end, you can always just cut really small pieces of wicker and just glue them down. As you see, I have a happy helper with me. Good boy. All right, about 1,000 more to do. Once the broomstick has been sanded down to a very smooth finish, it's time to start staining. We chose for ours to use red mahogany. And once the entire broomstick has been covered, all you're going to need to do is let it cure overnight. Simple as that.
Hey everybody. All right, we are back at the farm today. We're going to be putting some of the finishing touches on the broom, putting on the stencil for the logo, shellacking it, and finishing up the bristles. So let's go ahead and get to work. All we're going to do for this first step is just lay down some parchment paper, put a few pieces of masking tape on top, and lay down the logo and use a really sharp X-Acto knife to cut out the individual pieces. All right, so we are just about done with cutting out the logo here. There we go. All right, and now we have a custom logo. Everything's ready to be transferred. So for this particular logo, we're going to be using a metallic gold paint from Testers, made for their normal modeling kits, but it is absolutely perfect for this project. And as we go along through here, we're going to try to put down a light layer, not pushing too hard on the brush so that we don't get any under the tape. Okay, so since this is an enamel paint, I've let it dry for just a couple of minutes to make sure it doesn't move around as we peel the tape off. And of course, with a logo this complex, you're probably going to have a couple of small pieces that just don't want to come off with the rest of the tape. So I'm just going to use a nice sharp X-Acto knife to peel those pieces up. And as we remove them from here, you'll see it just start getting nice and clean. All right, here comes the last little bit. And we've got a nice finished logo.
All right, so now we're going to walk you through the process of how we made the kickstand and the pretty gold bands of the Nimbus. The tools you're going to need is some 6 ml foam, which we already have cut out to a 2-inch, a 1-inch, and a 1/2 inch here, and we already have it sprayed with Plastidip. Copper piping, we need a cutter and a bender. And some, we use MDF. If you just have some spare wood that you can cut into a piece, it'll be fine. And it's not shown here, but we'll show it in just a second. Some pretty gold spray paint, but that'll be coming up.
So for the copper, we're going to cut 2 pieces at 16 inches and 1 at 7.5. We're just using some basic 3/8 inch copper pipe for this. The pieces are going to be bent with our tube bender, and once they're into shape, they're just going to be attached together with a couple of short screws and a little bit of epoxy. And those and the banding for the handle are all going to be spray painted in the same color of gold. Once we've got the bands painted, the last little step for the bristles is going to be just wrapping it with tie wire on the very end to bring it into a final shape, and then cut off the tips of those bristles. I used a Dremel, but you could probably just do it with a pair of scissors, just until it's just long enough to come past the dowel that we put in there earlier. And finally, a few small pieces of wicker inserted into some of these gaps in the broom itself are going to fill it in quite nicely to make it look well finished. And the absolute last step here is just wrapping the banding around. I left mine a little bit too long so that I could cut them into exactly the size that I needed once we were ready to install everything, and just attach them with a bit of super glue.
So now we're going to
Last piece.
attach the kickstand. I'm gonna have my muscle do it.
All right, now we've got all the holes pre-drilled, and I went ahead and countersunk the top end of this one so that the screw will just sit down in there all nice and pretty.
Nice.
And there we go.
So we will get a little bit of that gold paint and just lightly tap on this screw. And then just do a couple of layers of shellac to seal it, and we'll be done.
All right, so I'd like to give a special thanks to Lazy May Cosplay for coming out and helping us out, both Elise and Marty. Hanging out in the shop today. They're here all the time. There really isn't really not much extra special about it. But anyhow, they made this wonderful Nimbus 2000. I hope this tutorial helps y'all make your own, and y'all have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
I am so scared right now.